The country's most successful women have found dozens of ways to prosper in 2024. It was a record-breaking year for these queens of capitalism, as their combined fortunes soared by nearly one-fourth to $154 billion. Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my colleague, Assistant Managing Editor, Carrie Dolan. Carrie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Brittany, for having me.
Of course, I first have to extend a big congratulations. Forbes just released its 10th annual America's Richest Self-Made Women list. So big congrats to you. I know that's a huge undertaking. But first, I want you to answer, how does one qualify for the list?
So by self-made women, what we mean is somebody who did not inherit their fortune. So we include people who founded their own companies. We include entertainers like Taylor Swift and Celine Dion. We also include people who maybe didn't found their own companies, but were hired into positions at companies like Facebook or eBay. Meg Whitman, former CEO of eBay, Sheryl Sandberg, former COO of Facebook. Folks like that are on our list.
I know that there's a number system to show just how self-made a woman is. Can you describe that a little deeper there?
So for our self-made scores, we look at just how self-made people are. Some people came from poverty. I mean, people like Oprah who came from nothing, right? So they get a 10. And then people who come from an upper middle class family would get something like a 7. And then if they are not a founder of their own company, they would get a 6. And so we have a whole post explaining the different scores and who works, who fits into those different categories.
This year, the cutoff was $300 million. Has it always been that high?
This is the highest cutoff we've ever had. So yeah, one of the components of making this list is a net worth component. It's the richest self-made American women. So last year it was 225 million to make the cut. We have 100 people on this list. We started tracking 100 people in 2020. This is the highest cutoff we've had since we started tracking 100 women on the list since 2020.
I'm interested, and I'm sure our viewers are interested as well, in learning more about the careers of these women. Are there common roles that these women hold in their companies? What industries are they in? Can you dive into that?
Yeah, nearly 3/4 of these 100 women have either founded or co-founded a company, and 22 of them right now are CEOs or co-CEOs of a company. Some of them have been CEOs in the past as well, but there's a big entrepreneurial, with that nearly 3/4 as company founders. There's a lot of people who created their own companies, and then a lot of them have then sold their companies to bigger companies. I'm thinking about Jamie Lee Kern, who sold her IT Cosmetics to L'Oreal. We have other folks like NYX, the founder of NYX Cosmetics, also sold. So people have, there's definitely a line in beauty. Beauty is definitely a line. Finance, there's a number of women. We have a newcomer from JP Morgan on our list, and we have a number of women who worked in finance, hedge funds, that kind of thing. But it's really kind of a mix. We also have, entertainers, and we have people who have come up with, cocktails. We have 2 new people in the alcohol business this year. So it's really all over the map.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a sprinkle of every type of industry, but I am curious who takes the top spot this year. If you've been following the list, it's a familiar name. Who's number 1?
Yeah, she's not famous, I'd say, globally, but if you're a follower of this list, Diane Hendricks is a familiar name. She's been number 1 now for more than 6 years. I think this is her 7th year as number 1. And she's worth more than $20 billion. She co-founded a roofing supply company with her husband, ABC Supply, and he passed away in 2007. She's been running the company as the chairman since then, and has been, it's now the largest roofing supply company in the country. Not a brand name, because they're not selling to customers directly, not selling to retailers, but known in the trades.
$20 billion, Diane Hendricks. Who else joins her in that billionaires club?
So there's 31 billionaires out of, that's 100 people on the list. So I'm not going to name all 31. One that's probably pretty well known to everybody is Taylor Swift, who Forbes declared her a billionaire last fall. Her big Eras tour has made her a ton of money. We've actually increased our estimate of her net worth since last fall, because of course she continues to tour. Her tour is going on in Europe, and So we now have her at $1.3 billion, up from $1.1 billion in the fall. Other
That
new billionaires, we've got a couple of women in tech. A woman named Sarah Liu, who's a co-founder of a company called Supermicro, which makes servers and supplies a lot to NVIDIA, the big chip company. And semiconductor investor Susan Ocampo, another new billionaire. And then from the wine business, we have Barbara Banke, who, with her late husband Jess Jackson, co-founded Jackson Family Wines, known for their Kendall Jackson wines. They also own La Crema and something like 40 vineyards in a bunch of different countries, including Chile and Australia and Italy.
you mentioned a very buzzy billionaire who has had a banner year. That's Taylor Swift. She's on the international leg of her stadium tour. She re-released albums as well as dropping a new one. She became a billionaire this year. Where specifically does she fall on this list?
Yeah, she comes right behind Rihanna. Rihanna's at number 23, and we've got Taylor at tied with a couple other people ranked at 24th richest in our list.
Can you talk about some other newcomers who are the newest women, the newest American richest self-made women?
One really interesting newcomer is a woman named Fawn Weaver, who founded a whiskey company that's the fastest growing whiskey brand in American history, as recorded history, as best we can tell, called Uncle Nearest. And essentially, Uncle Nearest was the person who helped Jack Daniel learn how to make Jack Daniels. And so there's a real historical figure that she named her whiskey brand after. And she set up a whole town and a group of places to visit, is make it a whole experience to partake in her whiskey. But we've got a whole story on her in the magazine, super interesting. Another cocktail entrepreneur, people may have heard of buzz balls, those colorful little plastic cocktail with funny names, or fun names, I should say, that are sold in lots of stores, including convenience stores and gas stations and stuff. So Marilee Kick, the founder of that, made our list for the first time. She just sold her company to Sazerac, which is the maker of Fireball whiskey, as people may know. Another newcomer is Mary Callahan Erdos, who's been at JP Morgan for something like 35, 40 years, and she's running their wealth management and their asset management business. And she is one of these people who is named as a potential successor to Jamie Dimon, should he step down from the role, which they've been talking about Jamie Dimon's eventual stepping down just in these past few days.
Carrie, obviously to make room for these newcomers, some women had to get the boot. So when you look at this list and compare it to last year, years before, who were some surprising drop-offs?
Yeah, well, one was Ann Wojcicki, the founder of 23andMe. That company's stock price has tanked. It's fallen something like 90% from its 2021 highs. The company was in danger of being listed. 23andMe is one of these companies where you order, you get a tube in the mail, you spit into it, and it tells you something about your DNA, your where you came from, and if you're at risk for maybe certain diseases. The company's having a tough time. Ann's talked about taking it private, so she's fallen off the list. Another person who fell off is Shonda Rhimes. She was on our list last year for the first time. She's the showrunner who's made all the shows that we love to watch, including Bridgerton, and she just did not make the cut. The cutoff rose so much this year. She didn't make the cut.
The cutoff rose so much. $300 million was that baseline. Whose fortune really rose the most, what do you say?
So one of the people another person whose fortune rose a lot is Lisa Su. She is the CEO of Advanced Micro Devices, better known as AMD, one of the chip companies that competes with NVIDIA. Semiconductor stocks have really been on a tear, a lot because of the adoption of AI. And so there's demand for more computing power from semiconductors. So her fortune's gone up. She became a billionaire earlier this year. I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Katy Perry is a newcomer to the list, and she is on this year for the first time as a result of a sale of her song catalog last fall. She's worth an estimated $350 million. And that's mostly thanks to the sale of her catalog.
And aside from Katy Perry, would you say that the people who saw their fortunes rise, could you attribute that at all to AI seeing really an explosion over the past year and a half?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a combination of AI has driven some stocks much higher. I mean, another newcomer is this woman, Sarah Liu, who's got her company makes servers, and they're very tied to the AI world as well. Um, I think in general, some of the stocks in different sectors have risen, and that's lifted the net worths of a bunch of the people on the list. They are richer than they've been ever. So they're together, this group is worth $154 billion, which is nearly 25% more than a year ago.
That's incredible. That's an incredible number when you quantify it like that. But on the flip side, who saw their fortune drop over the past year but still remains on the list?
Yeah, so one of the people whose fortune fell a fair amount is Whitney Wolfe Herd. She's the founder of the dating app Bumble. Bumble's been having a hard time in terms of its share price, and she stepped down as CEO of the company earlier this year, but stayed on as chairman. But the shares have fallen. She used to be a billionaire when that company went public, but the shares have tanked, and she's still on the ranks, but just much lower.
Something I love that Forbes does is they divvy up the entrepreneurs, the people on lists by states. California sees the most self-made women. Why do you think the Golden State sees so many of these entrepreneurs?
It's fascinating when we do the lists of the richest Americans as well, the 400 richest Americans, we usually see California as the state with the most of rich Americans as well. I think, one, we have a high population, it's a big state, but two, there's a lot of between the entrepreneurship and the innovation in Silicon Valley, and then we have people on this list in the entertainment business, so you have a lot of people from LA. So I think those sort of two pockets really draw. Plus, I gotta say, as a native Californian, as someone who lives in San Francisco, the weather's pretty good here, especially in the wintertime. So that's one good reason to live here.
Carrie, this is now the 10th annual list of America's richest self-made women. I am curious, what have you seen are the differences in this year's opposed to years past? What trends have you seen?
Yeah, so when we started this list, we started as a list of 60 people, and we've increased it to 100 over the years. I mean, what's been amazing is just the number of new companies that people have been able to come up with in different sectors over time. And people who, people who you thought might be on the list forever, as that cutoff increases. And the cutoff increases because basically many people are getting richer. But it's exciting to see new areas and new categories. I mean, the fact that this woman, Mary Lee Kick, who created Buzzballs, she was a high school teacher, and she came up with this as a side hustle. Like, there's just so many ways to be an entrepreneur. It's so hard to be a successful entrepreneur, and it's so interesting when people succeed.
I love stories like that. Forbes covers them well. I urge everyone to check out the full list. Carrie Dolan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Brittany.